Hello, I think it's time to get started.
Just sneak by.
Hi, my name is Ceci Vasconcelos. I'm the public art coordinator for the city. And it's a real honor for me to do this today. It's our first ever artist talk, if you can believe that. So thank you for being here. And I thought it was a sure thing by doing it with Glenn because he has such a following. He's a celebrity. So a few weeks ago, when Glenn finished the project of restoring this mosaic, we talked about doing a dedication, and I thought it was bigger than that. It was just, I mean, I am in awe of what he was able to do. So I thought, let's do an artist talk. I wanted to really talk about this. So that's why we're here. And so I'm going to turn it over to Glenn.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ceci. I appreciate the very kind introduction. I'm not a big fan of standing next to the microphone. I may step away and let me just try that and yell a little bit with my teacher's voice, and you let me know if you like that. Can you hear me okay if I speak? No? Yeah? Yeah, boo! All right. So here I am, tethered to the microphone. That's okay. I prepared a few notes to help guide me. I'm most comfortable just kind of talking off of the cuff, which I'll mix it up a little bit. But I have a few things I wrote down just because I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget about them. But before I get into that agenda, just the fact that so many of you are here today, some of whom I hadn't met before, had just been maybe passing by and wondering what was going on, but many of you were here 15 years ago when the mosaic first went in. Some actually worked on the mosaic. Dear Vince, when he was taking classes with me, Paul was both my student as well as kind of somewhat of a paid employee, but mostly voluntary. But Paul helped 15 years ago, and then he helped with the restoration as well. My close friend David Beatty, who's also a ceramic artist, came today, and he showed up one day. Well, I invited him to come, and he helped me with some of the restoration. So I could go on and on about that. But that fabric of friends goes back not only that 15 years, but even longer in Las Cruces. And it really warms my heart to see so many people here. So let me get into a little bit of the agenda if I can. I wanted to start by saying that in around 2010, it was when the mosaic first sort of was born, when we started on it. And the title of it is Earth and Cosmos. And we can look at some of the details of that. The little diagram down here on the floor kind of simplifies the different themes that are going on here. And an astronomer might say that the cosmos started with a Big Bang. I believe it probably did. But the Big Bang for this mosaic actually started with a phone call from Heather Pollard. I remember, for those of you who know Heather Pollard, she was a longtime director of the Doña Ana Arts Council and a real proponent of the arts. But I was tired one evening after a day of teaching, and I get a phone call at home from Heather. And she says, hey, Glenn, you know, we want to do something on the La Placita, which is this area, and we haven't had a lot of proposals. And I thought to myself, well, if Heather Pollard calls you at home, you ought to ask the reason for it. So I said, well, I think that is something I'm interested in doing. When's the deadline? She said, 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Well, I was due to teach the next day. I had classes all day long, so I did my quick thinking, and I think it was my drawing students or something, they could keep themselves busy if only I gave them a task. And on the side, I worked on a design, which is not too much different than what you see here, but it had some watercolor and some colored pencil to kind of bring it a little bit to life. So in maybe an hour and a half or 2 hour stretch, I knocked that sucker out during the day, and then wrote a little narrative and then sent that on to Heather Pollard. Well, you know what happened after that. I remember some years later, after having finished this, I saw Heather down here and I said, you know, do you realize you're responsible for this? Well, it was a tremendous amount of work. You can just imagine by looking at the number of pieces. And for those of you who have worked on it before, even just doing a small section of it is quite labor intensive. Okay, so let me check here on my list. Oh, I want to say thank you very much to Ceci Vasconcelos. In 2020, the great pandemic, this generation's pandemic, there was a water main break at the bottom end of the mosaic underneath the moon. And the reason I knew that the main had broken is I got a phone call or email, can't remember which, from someone from the city, and they said, oh, by the way, a water main broke at the mosaic and we had to pull a section of it out and we'd like you to fix it. And I you know, it was pandemic. Nobody was getting out, you know, doing anything. And I could just imagine what that was going to look like. And in fact, I couldn't come out even for a couple months because I just could imagine. And when I finally did come out, it's exactly what I thought it would look like. They had cut a big slice out of the mosaic and gotten into it with some equipment, pulled it out, and then dug underneath it and dragged a 12 by 12 foot section of the mosaic out. And the only thing keeping it from breaking into pieces was the rebar that was in it. And they just dragged it up and it sat there for nearly a year. And in that meantime, we had to decide, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix it? Well, that's the restoration side. Let's just talk about the original mosaic. I want to show you a little bit of the different themes that are here. With the title Earth and Cosmos, you would expect that. So I'll just point a little bit at the drawing, or you can glance to the drawing. In the center is the sun, the center of, say, our universe. At least into more contemporary times when we realize that our sun is quite small in the grand scope of things. And on one side of the sun, the side that we're sitting on, is the earth part. So there's broken up fractured stone, there's trackways, Paleozoic trackways, there's a daytime sky, there's water, autumn leaves. If you take a look, you'll see all of those represented. And then in the nighttime sky, are planets and the Milky Way, a comet, you name it. If you walk down there, you'll see all the different representations of a nighttime sky. The entire mosaic, once we had decided to do it and identified the tiles that needed to be used and that they were available to pick up, from the time we had the tiles until it was finished, was 14 months to complete. And that's a pretty quick pace, considering the restoration after the water main break took 4 years. 4 years. But to be fair, the working time, if everything had been in place, would have only been maybe 1 year. But as it is often with public art, a little bit with the city of Las Cruces, although I think they did an excellent job. Any organization is going to move more slowly. The more help, the more minds you put to it, the slower it works. But eventually, it got done. I hope I framed that in a positive way. When we were finished, the last time I saw Ceci, she and I were out here, and both of us grinning that we had gotten it done. And I recounted that 4 years ago, when it first came out, she had just come on in the arts board, and that the restoration almost lasted long enough to get her through to retirement. Okay, so this mosaic wouldn't be here without many people, without the Doñana Arts Council, without the city of Las Cruces, without my students, without volunteers, without employees, which I had from time to time. Hi, Kelly. How are you? Speaking of friends. And I just want to acknowledge how heartfelt it is for me to be here and see so much interest in the mosaic after so many years. It really is wonderful. It's a reflection of the power of art in our community. And I'm just happy to be on board with it. I'm just pleased that I could get a seat on the bus. So thank you all for being here. It's much appreciated. Okay, so the tiles started out as just a tile that you might buy from a tile shop. I'll pick one of them up to show you. The type of tile that I use is called solid body porcelain. And it's called solid body because it's the same color all the way through. It's solid color. And they were also selected because they had a certain grippiness to them. We couldn't use very slick tiles. There was a certain coefficient of friction that a city engineer determined. And commercial tiles all have a COF, coefficient of friction, and you can buy them with that. So we stayed within that. So there were certain colors and textures that were available. Some of them were a foot square like this. Others were quite large, like 18 inches by 24 inches. But the entire mosaic, you wouldn't know it by looking at it, started as geometric shapes. And then we went about finding ways to score them and break them and coax them into more interesting shapes. So we did that. The simplest way we did it was to take a hammer to one of those tiles with safety glasses on and give it a whack. And that would yield some pieces. And if some of the pieces weren't quite what you wanted or they were too big, you'd whack them again. That was the easiest way to make the tiles, and there's plenty of those here at the Mosaic. And sometimes we'd keep them together. I see a tile here that is complete, except it's broken in 4 pieces. And so sometimes we would bundle them together and keep them as a suite and then put them back down. There's another big one, yeah. And what's interesting, if you visit the Mosaic on different times, you'll start to see these families of shapes over and over again. And I'm always surprised when I come down here. I see things that I don't remember. Of course, I was part of it, but it's as if the Mosaic continues to refresh itself in my mind. It's just because there are so many pieces and so many combinations, possible ways that it can come together, that there is no way that you can remember everything, or that it could possibly be planned totally. Well, the way it kind of was conceived is to have these major shapes, as you see in the diagram, and those shapes are here, but then they just got infilled with various other types of tile shapes or tile colors. So what we noticed after playing with the tiles a little bit is that certain shapes would come up over and over again. If they were very small, we called them nuggets for obvious reasons. And you'll see plenty of nuggets here. And then if they were sort of the same shape or had the same size of butt end, we could put them together. And those we called connectors. I'll show you one. Okay, so the connectors are nice because they can stretch, they can make more longer shapes. And you'll see those in the long flowing areas like the arroyos here, or especially in the big swirls of the night sky. And then we also had, well, I'll call this one a swimmer, although it's not quite what I would consider a swimmer. This one's more like a bird. So the bird shape would come up quite often, and then every now and then we would save them because they were so beautiful. They were, you know, a beautiful expression of the bird or whatever. And then the ones that we hit with a hammer, my helper Deborah Bones gave those a name. She called those thugs because, you know, if you were a thug trying to make a mosaic, you would just whack it. And sure enough, the thugs are kind of thuggy. And this one we call the flag because it looks sort of like a flag. And these guys, they can sort of join together into 4s, or they can be surrounded with others. But once we learned how to sort of shape these flags, we couldn't replicate it exactly, but we could kind of get the flag over and over. So what we ended up with is families of shapes. and sizes and also colors. So the challenge was how to use these families, these brush strokes of shapes, of which we had tens of thousands, how to put those together to create the expression. And I didn't have the master plan, nor did anyone else have it. We would work together, and any given day, we would get around a pile of tiles of different shapes, or maybe we knew we were working on the arroyo, so those were going to be browns with some thugs and some swimmers, and we would just put it together. And about half of the mosaic was done in the studio, laid out carefully and then glued down to a mesh so it could be brought out and reinstalled installed at the site. And the other half of the mosaic was done alla prima, as they say in painting, which is we had a bunch of pieces down here and people around, and we would put wet mortar and we would just stick them in as we go. And that was some wild setting. Yeah. So a lot of it was really an expression of the crew that we had on any given day. Speaking of how many tiles there are, I remember one day Deborah Bones, who I hired to work on seaming and breaking tiles because it was so much work. I commented to Deborah, I said, there must be 150,000 pieces. And she said, there's 250,000 pieces. And I don't doubt that that's true. And she was grinding all of the edges. I think there were some extras. There are probably 150,000 pieces in here. And for somebody maybe who's very detail oriented, you could give me a count one day. So speaking of counts, when I was doing the restoration recently, people always would come around. They're very curious what was going on. And so a gentleman comes, he's visiting with me for a little bit. He's wearing a backpack, as a lot of people who come to the downtown mall often are. They visit the restroom and enjoy the surroundings. So he's visiting with me, and then he says, did you know that there's an upside down tile? You might see one. Anyhow, so I looked up to him and I said, well, there's actually several of those. And we has a moment of silence, and he says, there's at least 6. And so then I said, did you notice that there's one of the shells is upside down? That one, and probably there are some others as well. And this light bulb goes off, and he says, no, but I'm going to go check it out. So it shows that people are really interested. The fact that he would see that upside down one and see another one and then go looking for the other ones. That's just one of the games that you can do out here. And kids will do this too. You see them dancing around like there's a leaf, or there's another leaf, and they are just like butterflies flitting around down here. I suppose adults could do that too. Let's see how I've done. I'm doing pretty good on my project. I'm almost done with I had a couple more human interest stories. Vincent is here. I remember in the heat of the installation, literally, it was during the summer. We were working in July and August, and you can't work past 10 o'clock because it's dry wind and the mortar sets up. So we decided we're going to start at 4 o'clock in the morning, which we did for quite some time. And Vincent was one of my students, so we would come out. Vincent was the DJ. He has a brother who's a rock musician. So it was Jimi Hendrix and Def Leppard at 4 o'clock in the morning under the lights out here setting tile. Huh? When I look back at both my years teaching and also this project and some of the kind of what people might consider crazy stuff I did with my students, that is so like such a rich experience. I'm thankful for my students who participated in the opportunities to do that. It's just amazing. You know, it's one thing to go to class and read a book. It's quite another to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning with Jimi Hendrix and lay down some tile. Huh, Vince? Yeah. Some of my funnest times were with my students when we would go on field trips. One of them was a trip to Marfa, Texas. Huh? I can share that now without having to worry about my tenure. So during the installation, I remember we were about halfway through. We had made it from this end where we're sitting down to the sun and a little beyond. And then I got a request from the city. Could they have the salsa fest here on the placita? So I thought, well, okay, I'll grout the edge of it. It's already grouted in place. It can't be much harm. Well, if you've ever been to a salsa fest, everyone dribbles their salsa everywhere. So I come back after that weekend of the salsa fest, and this place, the entire mosaic was covered with salsa drippings. The concrete slab was, so the whole thing had to be cleaned before I could continue working. And speaking of salsa fest, we have here the Chili Queen from which year? Well, which year was that? Yeah, Christy Maestas and Paul and Dawn's daughter. I've sort of seen her grow up for the mosaic, but she was the Chili Queen the first year. Yeah, and then yay, good job, parents. They have raised some really good kids, really self-sufficient and solid kids. Yeah, nice job. And I have one more story to share. I think it was during one of these fall or these Friday evenings, I was walking here with my wife, Leanne, and we came across Rosemary McLaughlin. For those of you who have been in Las Cruces in the art scene, you'll know that Rosemary was a longtime artist, and her life career actually started out as a nun. And somewhere along the line, she decided, I don't want to do that anymore, but I do enjoy the art. Well, Rosemary was walking here, and we saw her one Friday evening, and we got to talking, and I told her about the mosaic, and she said, you know, when I was in Italy back in, must have been the 1970s, I collected some glass mosaic tesserae from the city of Murano. And sure enough, she was to do a mosaic project. Well, she had jars of these at her house. And I said, Rosemary, how about if we put some of those mosaic tesserae, those glass tesserae from Murano, Italy? I said, I'll squeeze them into the restoration. I'll just let you guys look for them. But if you go down to see the moon, which is the part that was restored, that's the only place you'll see those glass tesserae. So a little nod to Rosemary McLaughlin. Yeah, one of them has a little. Sometimes gold is used for the colors for glass. So Rosemary and I picked out some gold ones. Okay, so yeah, I've talked enough. The teacher, you can't wash the teacher out of the artist, I guess. I brought some sample tiles here. You're welcome to come see them. If you like, I could break a couple of them and show you kind of how we shaped them a little, or you could do that. We can go for a walk on the mosaic. Yes, a question. To see this, to see it all. No, like the overall, not really. Like this diagram, is that what you mean? Or it's so hard to photograph it. Yeah. Agave Arts, agave like the cactus, agavearts.com has some art studio. And the city of Las Cruces did a very nice short video about the restoration of the mosaic. Is it, Ceci, is it still?
Yes, it's
on your
Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's on the website, and they can find it on social media and on your Facebook.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, the question is, if I put this one in upside down, is there, well, in a face down orientation, I didn't really consider them upside down. Is there a way to get that off? it never occurred to me to take it off. I'm sure if you look at some of the ones that are here, most of that has kind of come off. It's probably alumina from the firing process. I can almost scrape it off. Not a concern. Yeah, and what got us started on those is sometimes a tile of a certain shape couldn't fit in this orientation, but it fit okay like this. And then we just started doing it like with the shell. It's a shell of a different tile flipped upside down, and so it's just a way to mix it up. And also this texture on the back is sort of shell-like, so that was nice. I mean, every imaginable orientation happened out here. It's amazing to come and see all the different ways it went together. Yes?
The question I have is, did you have requirement for the sub-base?
Yeah.
Which the tiles came?
Yeah, was there a requirement or a plan for the substrate, which is a concrete slab? Yes, there was consideration for that, and because there's traffic out here and it needs to be durable, the slab is 6 inches thick. So it's a cast concrete slab. The engineers, the designers determined it, the people who were responsible for the structural aspects of this area. But it's thicker concrete than a standard sidewalk for sure. Yeah, and it also has relief joints in it to allow the slabs to be somewhat independent so they don't press on each other. Okay. Oh, yes. The cuts in the slabs go all the way through the slab. And those cuts actually happened about 7 years ago as a result of some cracks that were happening, and the city engineer at the time determined that we needed to have these relief cuts. Yes, they go all the way through. Yeah, it's not a control joint. It's actually a cut all the way through. A control joint is just like a little slice they put on a sidewalk to make it crack there, but these go all the way through. So each of their expansion joints, yeah. Oh God. I don't think the amount of the budget makes sense. So many years ago, like the original budget, let me just say that the restoration, the restoration was more, just that one square, 12 by 12 feet, was more than what I received for the entire project. Sometimes budgets get squeezed and things happen. And a lot of that happened when this project originally went in, and we were so far into it, there was no turning back. It had to go on. And some funds came from the Downtown Las Cruces Partnership to help push it forward. Yeah, the slab was here ahead of the mosaic. It was just all slab, like a roadway. I used Latacrete 254 Platinum thin set, which is a acrylic modified thin set, sometimes referred to as pool thin set because it can be submerged in water. It's an ultra premium thin set mortar. It's a Portland-based modified mortar. Yeah, it's one of like an industry standard. The entire mosaic was put down with that. Yes. Sure.
That was a strange
I have friends who did this in their kitchen, did something like this in their kitchen. It's beautiful, but it's a labor of love. Yeah, of course, anything is possible. Yes, it's possible. Maybe I was a little reluctant. It almost felt a bit like a threat.
That means you don't want to do it for me. I
Uh,
got
I would visit with you about it. Yeah, as a teacher, I'm always, once I understand what somebody wants to do, I can see how passionate they are about it. Then that's when I try to step away and get them to follow their own passion. Yeah, but I'd visit with you about it, sure. Yeah.
Before anybody gets up, can I jump in there real
Yeah.
quick?
Okay.
So, of course, you're welcome to stand up and look at everything. So, but I just wanted, before you start doing that, I wanted to acknowledge our city art board members who help us with finding projects to do, and they provide the Stern Advisory Board, and they're all volunteer. And there are 2 openings if anyone's interested. So, Susan Polka, who's right over here, thanks for coming. Melanie Gray, right back, and Brown, I'm sorry. Gray's her middle name. John McDuffie, right back there. Did I miss that one?
My GPS threw me astray, so I
Megan
got
for helping you set all
That's
of this
okay.
up. Megan, our co-op for Minimus Youth.
Good to see you.
So, October is Las Cruces Public Art Month, and to celebrate, we've started a scavenger hunt. And I'll give you a little clue. This piece is included, and it's a scan to solve the clues in the scavenger hunt. So we have maps back there on the table. Feel free to pick one up. But look for signs that look like this, and you have to scan them to figure it out. So I hope you all will play, and you'll play for prizes. And yeah, there's refreshments and swag, so please help yourselves to that. I'm done.
All right. Thanks, all. I'll stick around and visit if you like, or go for a little stroll on the mosaic, or we can cut some tiles or whatever. Give hugs. Okay. Thank you all for coming.